The chair now recognizes Mr. Raskin for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for conducting this very important hearing. One of the things we've learned during this grim period in our history is that propaganda works on a lot of people. So misinformation and disinformation are actually undermining the public health. They promote vaccine hesitancy, they generate social discord, they destroy the cohesiveness of our public health efforts. And yet to this day, members of Congress are spreading anti-public health propaganda. Let's take a look at some of the examples, if you'd be kind enough to put it up on the screen. Last month, Representative Gaetz said that, quote, "The best vaccine we found is Mother Nature's vaccine. It's contracting the virus." Well, this is false and dangerous. The best vaccine we have is a vaccine. Yesterday, the CDC published a study which found that vaccination remains the safest strategy for averting COVID-19 infection, hospitalization, and death. So his statement is like saying the best vaccine for polio or the German measles is contracting the disease. Representative Boebert said Biden has deployed his needle Nazis to Mesa County. This is a dangerous lie. It equates state, local, and federal public health efforts with history's worst fascist dictatorship, a regime responsible for genocidal violence against millions of people. The analogy is an affront to millions of doctors, nurses, and medical personnel and government workers on the front lines of the struggle to protect us against COVID. And it's an insult to the memory of millions of people slaughtered by the Nazis. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene told her supporters, quote, "Biden is going to homes to push shots, just say no." This kind of propaganda and anti-public health advocacy has created dramatically higher vaccine hesitancy among Republicans than Democrats, and even contributed, as we heard from Governor Inslee, to the disproportionate rates of COVID-19 deaths among Republicans. And finally, as the Omicron variant was spreading, the House Judiciary Committee Republicans amplified false insinuations about the effectiveness of booster shots, tweeting, "If the booster shots work, why don't they work?" These are just a handful of numerous examples of politicians spreading dangerous misinformation and confusion. Governor Polis, do you think that false statements like these have undermined vaccination efforts in your state? What have you done to combat them?
Look, I think that everybody should look at the data and make factual statements. Obviously, we have free speech in our country, but we've seen the danger in the tunnels of misinformation that people go down, spread often through social media, sometimes amplified by people in positions of power and authority. I hope that everybody takes a hard look at the data and uses whatever soapbox they have, however large or small, to really use a fact-based approach to save lives and move past this pandemic.
And Mayor Bowser, what would you say to fellow elected officials who continue to spread propaganda that discourages Americans from getting vaccinated or from wearing masks? You got to unmute.
I think it's especially problematic, Congressman, because they themselves have been vaccinated and boosted and are enjoying the benefits of those vaccines, and they know better. And they also probably more than most of their constituents know of people who have suffered and died because of this virus. Nobody should die in our hospitals attached to a ventilator and have to say goodbye to their families when there is a safe and effective vaccine. And we all need to be saying that. We've heard it said that the vaccine should stop. Public health has always said that the vaccine was effective against serious illness and hospitalization and death. That has always been the promise of the vaccine, and it is working.
Thank you. Governor Inslee, about 75% of coronavirus deaths in your state since February of 2021 have been among unvaccinated people. And a study conducted last year found that the highest rates of coronavirus death in Washington state were concentrated in the 15 most Republican counties, which is an alarming statistic. How do you account for this dramatic divide, and what does it tell you about what we need to do?
Well, number one, you mentioned at the outset that propaganda works. propaganda worked, in the 40s, but it works 100 times more now because of the internet and the algorithms that we have and the ability of the internet to spread a lie. If a lie went 25 miles an hour 2 decades ago, it goes 250 miles an hour now. And we have seen the impact of that. Just some of the quotes you showed up are certainly some of the egregious things. But listen, we have a guy who's been appointed by the Republican Party to sit on the subcommittee on the coronavirus crisis, Congressman Jordan. He's been given by the Republican Party a soapbox to talk about this. And he comes before this committee and spends his 5 minutes basically saying, you shouldn't trust science. You shouldn't trust the CDC. You shouldn't trust people who tell you vaccine works. And that's what the Republican Party put up as their spokesperson. We need the Republican Party to take some responsibility here and not put their members who are spreading this dangerous filth to America. And I'm urging all Republicans of good faith to do that.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, we've got to stop inflaming people's misunderstandings with propaganda, with conspiracy theory. Let's invest in the health of all Americans. Thank you for this hearing, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr.